hoping that they can get back to me relatively
And I
soon.
just got an email from them too, asking for to do like an exit interview type thing,
Sure.
exit paperwork. I
Oh,
will
cool.
get that all done. They'll probably send it over.
Yay.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Probably is the other one.
No, you're good. Zoom, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but there's noise in the background. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very, very dim, but there's static.
Okay. How about now?
Much better now, but the static is a bit there still. Hi, lovely lady.
Hi. So if I sing to you, would that?
Sing for me. I love it.
Don't lie.
I do. It was good.
Oh, thanks. I was in chorus. Okay.
You said there's still static?
Kind of. Is there static?
The answer is yes.
Perfect.
Is the other mic on? This one? Sometimes when you put mics together, they create a lot of static.
No, that one's not even. That's charged. That's charged.
But they're on.
Yeah. So bizarre. Like I
Three super.
don't understand anything. I'm gonna do this camera just I can. Here, we emailed the city. So that's good.
Now your screen is gone.
Oh, good.
Oh, now we have the class. Hi, Mikkel. Love you.
That's funny.
The static is gone. No, it's back.
What about now?
Static is on.
It's still staticky?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a song out of static forever.
A static song? That would be great. I would love a static song.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yay!
Yay, yay, yay. I see you partial, but I can't hear you.
Because I'm talking.
Okay.
Trust me, when I'm talking.
Static on.
Like a static.
Is it that it's near the ball there?
No. I don't know. Honey?
Okay, now no static.
Weird.
It has to do with the ball there, honestly.
I don't think he will. Because that's not legal. Well, misrepresentation. Yeah. You can't make a house, even its yard, look like anything other than what it really looks like. That's It's misleading. You can maybe ask him if he's willing to do it, and if you put it on the MLS and openly put a caption on it, that it's a rendering of what the grass could look like landscaped, then the legality of it is debatable, and no one's probably going to complain. But
Static again.
Pretty much. Okay. You're welcome. Bye, darling. Hi, guys. How we doing?
Good.
Good.
Brittany, static again.
Does it ball ever have the mic still?
No, I stopped. Ella, come back. Leave and come back in.
Right.
Say that.
Leave and come back in.
Yeah, you got a few minutes. I'm behind as usual.
Okay, no static now.
I always squeeze too much in there. And then when I meet with people, I want to give them quality. Then I got people I got to call back. I have clients who want to add a showing, you know. Trying to get my hair done today, but
You're a Red Sox fan?
These are good problems.
Bruins, babe. UCLA.
Bruins.
I know, I thought it was Boston too, but then I saw UCLA.
But yeah, when I was traveling, like, I don't wash my hair. It's a hat day. I like hats anyways, especially with sunglasses. I feel kind of like incognito, like I can go do whatever I want and no one can see me, even though that's not true at all. In fact, I like rolled my eyes at someone when I was eating lunch with them and they're like, you know, I can actually see your eyes under your glasses, right? And I was like, wow. No, but thank you for telling me because I'm an idiot. And abroad, everyone thinks it's, yeah, Boston. I'm like, no. Bruins. Bruins. Thank you. I was gonna ask you about that. I also need the Zoom login for last week's. All right, can everyone at home hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Thank you for making me the host. You're the best.
Yes.
So we're going to start talking about comparative market analysis, which I'm going to refer to as CMA from now on because that's a mouthful. A CMA is one of the most valuable pieces of information we give to a client, whether that's a buyer or a seller, right? Because how do they know what's a fair offer price, or if they should be comfortable paying a certain price for home unless they have this information? And for a seller, well, I mean, they're probably not going to listen to you, but they're going to ask you what their home is worth. And then it's up to you guys to decide if you can reconcile that difference and if you want to list it for them or if they'll listen. I wish you many good clients who actually listen. It is, it is so important to do a good job of providing accurate, honest information as far as your professional opinion on the evaluation of a property's worth. And it is not a science, it is definitely an art. Okay? And things happen in the market, they trade, you know, for far under or far above, sometimes for reasons like what's uncovered during the course of inspections and escrow, sometimes just because a seller has bad luck or something is mismanaged, right? Sometimes, you know, a listing falls out of escrow because the buyer gets cold feet a couple of days into the contract. Those days on market show, that cancellation of escrow shows online, and there is a lot of stigma to it. So it's really important, you know, as the seller's agent or the buyer's agent, that people feel really confident about value, that you're really adamant about it, that you really support it. They still probably won't listen to you whatsoever, But you can only do your best, right? Even if they won't listen to you now, them listening to you one day starts with now. Right? So let's talk about what really affects property value, and then let's talk about what criteria should be implemented when you pull property to compare for a subject property value. So always key, what is always king in real estate value? Number one thing.
Location.
That's right, we say it 3 times, location, location, location. You drop the same house in Van Nuys as in Beverly Hills, doesn't matter. That Beverly Hills house is gonna be worth significantly more, right? And why do you think that is? Well, the desirability. Desirability is usually linked to city services, particularly schools. Safety and schools, okay? And in the general LA area, there are only a couple of areas that have consistently highly rated schools all the way from K to 12. Why is this important? Well, if you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars sending your children to a private school, you can probably afford more as far as your home, right? And it's a huge motivating factor for families, right? They want the best for their children, so they want a really good education and they're willing to pay for it. Whether that means a private school or that means buying property that costs more so they can get them into those big public schools. Now, that being said, of course, there are highly rated schools spotted throughout, but there are only those few consistent locations that have K through 12 that are highly rated. Any idea what those areas are, guys? Take some guesses. Obviously, Beverly Hills. Okay. I'm not super familiar with South Pasadena, but perhaps. Where can we find ratings for schools? Greatschools.org for LA City. You can Google it. Think about sales prices, guys. This will clue you into where else might be areas that have highly rated schools K through 12. Take guesses.
Beverly Hills.
Yeah, Beverly Hills. Where else? Malibu, yes. Brentwood, north of Sunset. Why north of Sunset? Because north of Sunset feeds to Pali High School, Pacific Palisades High School. Does not. They have different schools, even like Kenter Canyon Elementary. Like all of those schools are really good north of Sunset. Why? That's why you see such a price increase, even in the homes without any kind of view between south of Sunset and north of Sunset. There are a few exceptions, so I want you to make sure you always double check. There is a little tiny pocket south of Sunset that goes to Pali High. I didn't know about this until I was searching like a crazy person for a client for a long time. But I didn't believe that to be the case until I accidentally inadvertently found it. So don't be like me, double check yourself every single time. Okay, there is a small little pocket that does. Where else? Culver City, guys. Culver City price per square foot is up there with Brentwood, Bel Air, Beverly Hills. Bel Air has some of the shittiest schools, guys, by the way. That's why we see the sexy houses in Bel Air that sell for a lot. Otherwise, not so much. Really bad public schools for Bel Air. Okay. So Bel Air is an exception, and that is because we have exceptional property with exceptional views.
Not all the public schools.
Same thing with like Bird Streets, right? We have exceptional homes, exceptional views, but maybe not the best schools. Consistently though, Culver City, Brentwood north of Sunset, and Beverly Hills, and that is what drives and keeps those sales prices very high in those areas, listed in some of the most desirable areas in the LA area for home buyers.
I would say the South Bay as well, especially Manhattan Beach.
Yes,
All the South Bay
ma'am.
schools.
I went to Grandview and Mariposa. So I'm an MD girl.
There you go.
I had a shitty family too, but I had a really good education.
Yep.
God, my saving grades.
But,
Yes, South Bay has great schools.
Yeah.
But Christine, I don't agree with the Bel Air. Some of the public school on Bel Air, they are very good actually, because some part of Bel Air is they have Warner Elementary that is very good.
There's one tiny pocket that feeds to Warner, but it's like northeast Bel Air, and that's not most of Bel Air. So like I said, you do need to check every single property address because sometimes neighboring homes don't even go to the same school. I'm talking about generalities, Hetty, but yes, there are exceptions, 100%. But for the most part, Bel Air does not have such great schools. You really have to look address to address, just like in Brentwood. where I believed I knew what that defining line was. I was wrong by a 3-block radius. And guess what? I sold them a house in that 3-block radius because I bothered to look. I
Yeah.
don't know why, what made me think I should question myself, but I'm so glad I did. Always question yourself, always double check. So location, and location is usually fueled by city services, particularly schools. What else? Well, there's a difference between value and stuff in Upper Bel Air and Lower Bel Air, right? If they were exactly the same homes. Why? Accessibility. So we can stick with the example of South Bay. So I grew up in Manhattan, Redondo Beach. In South Bay, there's a hilly community that's really beautiful, really great schools called Palos Verdes and Rolling Hills, but it is at least a 20-minute drive to any freeway. So what does this do? It limits the buyer pool to people who don't really need to go to an office consistently, right? And this is a high income and a very, high property value area. And so you don't have tons of buyers that have that kind of income or stability that don't have to continue, to work to go into some place. Now, that changes a little bit with pandemic, and we have a lot more virtual stuff going on. So maybe that's not quite as important, but think about it. Your kids want to go do something fun. You want to go shop. 20 minutes to get to a freeway is a long time. Okay? And things down there are getting better where they're putting more shopping and stuff like that in there. But we have a saying in South Bay. I was actually talking to some people who live there last night, and it's called the bubble. We call it the South Bay bubble because it's really hard to get out of because it's a pain in the ass to go anywhere that's not outside of there. And it's nice and it's relaxed and you have the beach, so why go, I left because I wanted a bigger career. And I wanted to not date someone who I knew had, slept with like 10 of my girlfriends. It's a small town vibe if you're from there, yeah. People move there or they're born there. There's not, they move there to raise their family or they're born there.
Can you please tell us about the easement that some of these houses, they are located in the very small road that they have an easement?
Eddie, I'm gonna stop you. You have to repeat yourself because I didn't catch part of that.
I would like to know if it's possible you explain about the houses, they have an easement, means especially in Bel Air that some of these small road that 3-4 houses located on
An
that.
easement for a shared access road.
Yes.
Ingress and egress. I wouldn't say that affects property value so much. Obviously, if it's a dilapidated road with no existing agreement for how maintenance is handled, which is almost how all of those private roads are, by the way, guys, maybe that could be a factor because it's just in such disrepair. But I wouldn't say that that is probably something you need to factor in the CMA at all. Yeah,
because for me, I just found out this recently that most of these houses, they have to bring up, for example, the trash cans because the truck is not going down to bring their trash or their gardener has to do that. That's what I was thinking, if it's affecting to the price of the houses in an easement or not.
Yeah, but anyone buying a house out there, if you can't afford a gardener to take out your trash cans, I mean, probably shouldn't be buying in that area or in that price range. So again, I don't think this is really a factor in evaluation of a home, of the kind of values that we're talking about generally in the areas we're generally working in. You will see there are classes. I'm just going to throw this out there right now. I actually hired a team agent based on a great question. I was so impressed with this question. He was going out of his way to take additional courses through car.org. And they were teaching CMA and they were teaching, how to estimate value between finished carpentry material. That's like the difference between countertops. Okay. And he's like, this doesn't make any sense here. And I'm like, he's like, please help me understand this. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense here. This is education on appraisal and comparative market analysis for tract housing. We don't have tract housing here. Okay, that's more like we'll see stuff like that out. Like the closest that I see a lot of it is like Ontario near Magic Mountain, where you see these big, huge developments with hundreds of homes, and those are the only differences are the finished materials. That's the only time that something like an easement, what type of countertop is really gonna like play on value. And even then, it really only has an effect on value when it's newer, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if your countertop was really nice or if it was cheaper. If it's 10 years old, it probably needs to be remodeled anyhow, right? So, so I want you to keep that in mind. As you continue your education, always think about and question, where is this educational material coming from? Does this apply to my market? We have a very unique market. We have a luxury market, right? And it's luxury because of the desirability of the area, not necessarily because of the homes, right? Because we can buy an ugly ass $2 million home. We're lucky if we can find an ugly ass $2 million single family residence that is habitable, right? In most of the areas that we're in now. So just keep in mind that California and National Association of Realtors, they're not necessarily giving you information that's relevant to you in your market. We also have a big discrepancy in the years that our homes were built, right? We had a big development boom between like 20s and 40s. And then again, like late 70s on, okay? Every single time I need to call back. So just keep that in mind. So what are we looking at? Again, location, desirability, okay? Then we're gonna look at basic specs, okay? Basic specs are always gonna be really key. What do I mean by basic specs? Well, that's lot size, okay? Be careful when we get into hillside homes because you'll see 40,000 square foot lot. Well, maybe only 6,000 of that is flat and usable. Do you think that the unbuildable, unusable portion, do you think it adds any value to the property? Nope. In fact, it's just a little bit more of an expense to maintain. Brush clearance. Maybe it makes it so your fire hazard insurance policy costs more because there's more of a fire risk because of that. So not all lot sizes or numbers should be taken into account. And that is really tough to account for when you're doing a comparative market analysis. You really have to see the property and kind of eyeball it, okay? Which is tough if you're doing a CMA for a listing presentation. We haven't seen the home. So sometimes when I'm pulling a CMA, it's only 90% complete. I'm not forming my final opinion until after I get there. And you can ask the owner all day long, but they don't always give you accurate information. Also, property records with square footage, bed bath count isn't always accurate, even if everything's permitted. So I do always make sure I check. If I haven't seen the property, I check with whoever has seen the property to verify, like, are these numbers correct? Because if I make a CMA based on numbers that are inaccurate, my CMA is completely invaluable, right? And I look like an idiot. All I have to do is ask. If the client gave me inaccurate information, well, that's on them. And when I walk in, I can generally tell the difference between 1,200 square feet and 2,000, right? And I can say to them, oh, you know, property record says that there's only 1,200 square feet here. I confirm that with you, but I can tell you right now, there's significantly more square footage. And that's a good thing because it means that your home is worth more than what I would have otherwise assessed. So I think that we need to get a floor plan drawing company out here to give us an accurate square footage count, right? That kind of thing. I'm going to get that second appointment, right? Going to get that second appointment, but I have to have accurate information in order to give an accurate range. So square footage of the home, bed bath count. All right. There are some external economic factors to consider also, right? So external means anything that affects property value that is not directly physically contained within property itself. So what could this mean? Well, maybe the property is located on a very busy street, a lot of traffic, that's noisy. Perhaps there is a large condo complex next door and construction behind, right? That does affect desirability. I don't know how significantly, but you're going to have less buyer pool, which does have downward effect somewhat on pricing. It may or may not be significant. Really have to exercise good judgment in it. And when I make recommendations to clients, you know, I give a range, but I tell them it's very difficult to assess, you know, the effect on value based upon, you know, the retirement home being next door and you being 3 doors in off of Coldwater Canyon. It's very difficult, but I can tell you that it does mean your home is worth less than if it was 3 blocks further in on the same street. So here is my range. You know how we can correct for that? Well, we can correct by that by for that by making sure we price on the lower end of things, right? Generally speaking, you cannot underprice a property. If you do, you're going to get multiple offers. It's going to come up to where it probably should. Not always, but usually. Can you overprice a property though? Yes, absolutely. And does that hurt you? 100%. Doesn't matter what kind of market it is. Overpricing always hurts you. It means more days on market, which leads to, and fewer eyes on it, which means fewer offers, if any. And then once a property's on the market for any length of time, it becomes kind of stigmatized until you have a price reduction. And most of the time, buyers do not respond to $25,000, $50,000 price reduction. General rule of thumb is that if a buyer thought a property was worth within 10% of what you listed it for, you would have gotten an offer for that price. So if I price a property at $2 million and I don't get any offers, that means that I probably need to make a minimum of a $200,000 price reduction in order to chase that market down. And that's a bad thing. That's a really bad thing, right? So just keep that in mind. And these are tidbits of information that you can use to share with your clients when you're trying to present information to them and getting them to accept true market conditions, and giving them information and education so they can make better decisions for themselves, right? I don't feel bad for a seller who doesn't listen to me on price that I share this with, and we're in that situation and we have to do that price reduction. I don't feel bad for them. And they usually will give me that price reduction eventually because I shared that with them. I remind them of that sharing, right? I give them my honest opinion. But again, I am not the boss. I work for them. They are my boss. And so whether or not they listen to my advice, whether or not they choose to do what I advise, it is my job to do the very best I can in achieving their goals the way that they want, if I can. If I cannot, then it's another conversation, right? But these conversations in the works, these seeds planted, are very important for you ever getting someone who's being unreasonable about value to a reasonable point. Same thing with buyers. Unfortunately, with buyers, a lot of times it's not worth it. Well, we're going to offer this anyways. Okay, well, there are also 3 other offers over asking, but we can offer under asking, even though it's very logical to anyone who listens to this that they're not going to get the property. They probably won't even get a counter offer. Until it happens, they're not going to listen to you, but they might listen to you the second time, but probably not. They might listen to you better the third time, or it might even be the 4th time, but eventually they'll start listening a little bit. Let's talk about some differences between condos and houses in relation to this external economic factor that I'm talking about. So this is particularly, a big deal for single families in the instances we talked about with less desirable features: proximity too close to the freeway, busy street, construction going on next door, like the druggy house with parties raging every night next door, or someone who has 6 dogs kept outside that bark 24/7, right? This all affects it. What about a condo? So for a condo, deferred maintenance in the common areas. I'm here anytime. I'll write an offer for you right now. The maintenance of the common areas, the health of the financials of the HOA have a huge effect. The HOA dues themselves, because here's the deal. If a buyer is purchasing with a loan, most of them are, the way that a lender factors in HOA dues is kind of exponential. So let's say a buyer is qualified for $1 million purchase. They buy $1 million single family residence, no problem. High HOA dues, they might only be able to purchase a $900,000 condo. Doesn't necessarily make sense because HOA dues cover maintenance and they're shared by all the homeowners, right? With single family, you're kind of fucked. You got to do it all by yourself. So it doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. And so you have to keep this in mind. Same thing with like, it generally takes me longer to sell like full service, Wilshire corridor condos. Why? Well, there's a more limited buyer pool for that, right? They have to want those services. They're paying astronomical HOA fees in the thousands of dollars per month. A lot of times, but not always. These are my elderly clients who don't want to deal with anything. This is their retirement spot. It's not always them. But there's a lower buyer pool for that because buyers can qualify for less. Maybe they don't want those HOA services, right? I don't need someone to valet park my fucking car. I need an attached car garage so that I can just come and go fast because I need to be fast, right? So valet parking is not appealing to me, even though it might be to someone else who has a lot more time on it. So you have to think about things like that. Sometimes there'll be things like in a condo, no, the HOA will not allow the installation of washer and dryer in unit. This is usually because there aren't existing water lines, which many problems with leaks. They're worried about installation, stuff like that. A lot of times these are older condo buildings, and right, in-unit washer dryer is a major convenience factor. So this might make a condo significantly less valuable to a buyer. And this is just a tiny little thing, right? But I'm sorry, I am not going to live someplace I cannot throw my wash and dry in when I need to, when I think about it late at night, or, you know, when I'm half dressed from the shower. I'm not going to get dressed, stick it in a basket, take it down the hall, wait for someone else. And I don't have time to sit around and wait to change my laundry. I'm gonna be pissed too if someone takes it out and sticks it on top of the washing machine. Or it even touches my things. I don't want anyone touching my underwear. Those are mine. So little things like that can have significant effect on value. It's convenient stuff. Yes.
What would you recommend if we're getting a condo listing for that information prior to the CCNRs and the HOA docs up front? Like, we'll talk with the client, what would you recommend?
So if you can get the HOA docs up front, I would, just because it's going to give you the most complete picture of everything. However, they're expensive. HOA management companies take forever. You might not be able to get them before you need to list. At a bare minimum, call the HOA management company and ask these questions. You want to know, you know, what is in the reserve account, what's in the operating account, any upcoming special assessments or dues increases. You know, any maybe not scheduled, but potentially discuss repair items that could influence this. If there are any pet restrictions. Now, guys, don't let pet restrictions ever really discourage you, because we have something called ESA, emotional support animal, and those are not pets, and no HOA can enforce anything on an ESA. They are not pets. They cannot restrict their breed. They cannot restrict their weight. They cannot restrict anything like that. Okay, so there is always a way around pet restrictions, but every person can only have one ESA legally. So I had a woman who had 3 cats. Oh no, we worked it out. But right, it was hard to find a lot of HOAs that would allow for any more than 2 pets. And I told her, well, at the end of the day, you can have your 2 pets and get 1 ESA cat. That was my workaround. But honestly, it was a new development out in the desert. They just wrote this in, I'm sure, so they didn't have animal hoarders in there. And so we wrote to the HOA management company and asked for a special exception for her 3rd cat, and said, you know, we can do the ESA route, but we'd rather just be upfront. This woman just, you know, she's a retired woman, she's got 3 cats. Okay. They said, okay, great. But that's not always the case. So don't go showing, you know, clients property that they can't have their animals at, because if you put me in an escrow and you ask me to choose between the condo and my pup, it's my pup. Yeah. And you just did a whole lot of work for free, and I no longer trust you because I told you I have a pup. I'm probably mad too because I wasted money in inspections on a house that doesn't work, or a property that doesn't work. What else? Let's see here. So when you get into higher end properties, amenities and style count a lot more. Bedroom, bathroom count, as far as comp score compared to market analysis, are really important the smaller number there is. So if I have a 2-bedroom, 3-bathroom house that I need to comp out, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom house for sure. If I can get away with enough comps, 2-bedroom, 3-bath, fine. But I am willing at that point to go ahead and do any 2-bedroom with 2 to 4 bathrooms. However, if I have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, I am only looking at comps that have 1 bathroom, because there is a huge difference between 1 bathroom and 2, isn't there? As far as convenience factor, absolutely. Do I care when I'm looking at comps if something's 5 or 7 bedrooms? Probably not. I'm probably more focused on the square footage and condition of the property that at that time. And I want to let you know that some agents will say you need a certain amount of comps. Sometimes a certain amount of comps do not exist. And it doesn't matter. If I have 2 amazing, perfect comps, that is all I need. I am not forcing a third or a fourth, square peg into a round hole. That is actually degrading the quality of my information, right? So if I have 1 or 2 great comps, that's fine. If I have 10, fantastic. If I don't, I don't. I can only have the comps that exist. Another practical matter, only sold properties are real comps. Okay, so if you're putting active or pending stuff into CMA, you're making a mistake, because does list price have any indication of actual value and sales price? Absolutely none. No. Sometimes you will pull comps and you will see anomalies where something is a great comp, but it's sold for significantly more or less than other comps did. Pick up the phone, call that listing agent and find out why. Most of the time, if it's something really blatant, you'll find it in agent private remarks on the MLS, but maybe they had horrible inspections where they found mold all over the place and they had to give $100,000 credit. You don't know these things unless you pick up the phone, right? So there's all these other factors. So don't discount a comp because it's an outlier. Find out why it's an outlier, because I guarantee you, your client that you're showing these comps to, they're probably going to know about this, particularly if they're a seller, and they're going to bring it up. So you need to know why it's an outlier. Sometimes it is just luck, but most of the time not. Now, we talked about solds being the only valid comps, particularly with sellers. Active and pending homes are still going to be discussed and have value. So I do a CMA of my valid comps, but I print out the MLS listings of all of the competition in the area. And I've spoken to those listing agents to find out if they're in escrow, fishing around, will they give me any idea of what number they're at in escrow under? Are they going to close soon? They're going to be much more likely to tell me what that number is. I need to know why, because my sellers might say, well, this house was listed at $2 million. You're saying ours is only worth 1.7. Let's say in the very unrealistic situation where they have a grasp on their home being of the same quality. I have sellers all the time. They're like, well, this one is 2 million. So mine's worth more. I'm like, that's brand new fucking construction. What are you talking about? You're saying that your house is worth more price per square foot than brand new construction. That's not the case. Most of the time, I don't have people that crazy, but I do sometimes. So let's say, it's a perfect world and they're exactly the same house in exactly the same condition. Well, just because it's on the market at 2 does not mean that is where it's closing. And so if I don't get an idea from the listing agent of where they are under contract, my seller's going to think they can have that 2 all day long, when in fact, because I made a phone call and I got information and I went above and beyond, the agent's like, no, it's in contract at 1.6. And it's the only offer we got after staying on the market for months and reducing twice. Because it's only worth 1.6. I can bring that back to my sellers, and now my sellers feel much better about my evaluation at 1.6. And now they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. And now I'm not going to have such a hard time selling a property that's overpriced. Yes.
What's your rebuttal for verbal offer? If you're representing a buyer and the seller's agent comes back, but no, it's a lot later. Oh, we had a verbal offer. I don't want to obviously blast them, but what would you say to them?
I wouldn't say anything to the listing agent. I would say to my buyers, verbal offer is only as good as the words coming out of a mouth, and who knows whose mouth it is. Let's talk about what value is. Let's talk about what you're comfortable with, and let's write our offer without any concern for anyone else's fake or real offer that may exist. We can never be upset if we didn't get the property, or if we did, as long as all we ever did was make a fair offer that we're comfortable with. And that is the best advice I can always give them, is let's look at value. This is where I think it is. How do you feel about it? Let's go to the, close to the max of what you're comfortable with. If we're worried about any competition, or if there's no competition and you want to try a little lower, let's start off a little bit lower. Let's not be insulting, but let's see what we can get away with. But yeah, nobody can ever be mad if they did it, they got it, or didn't get it, if they're comfortable with that number. I can write a lot of worthless offers. Maybe I can, the only person that's hurt is my time. But you know, I have to do that to get them to a place where they're realistic and what we do. And I need that rapport for trust. The more I do the work with them, the more they're gonna trust me when it comes time and it is the right house. All right, so there are situations where there are absolutely zero comps, guys. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to conceptually teach you about the method I use when I have to comp out something where there's no comp. So on that note, real quick, condos, I try not to go outside of the building. I'll even go years back and try to account for property value increase, like average property value increase in that area, because I have the condition of the common area, right? That I cannot replicate. It's like doing 2 CMAs if I have to try to come up with a value for a condo that doesn't have any comps in the same building. I have to comp out the buildings before I can even comp out the condos. And condos interior condition is really like the king on the difference in values, as well as building height. Oh, view also, guys, view blows value out of the water. Okay, so views have exponential value depending on their beauty and how they're situated. And that's in a single family or in a condo. So let's say that Wilshire corridor I was talking about, right? I can have something either facing Wilshire or south, if it's on the south side of Wilshire, or north, if it's on the north side of Wilshire. The same condo, exactly the same everything, facing Wilshire is going to be worth significantly less than the one facing the opposite direction with a pretty view. And whether it's Wilshire side or the other side, if I have something on the 10th floor, well, something on the 15th floor is going to be worth more. Always. And I don't mean just worth more if it's, you know, 1/10 the size of what's on the 10th floor. I just mean like price per square foot. It's going to have higher value the higher up it is. Oh yeah, so I don't like to go out of the building. Now, as far as single families or even condos are concerned, right? Condos, I really don't want to go out of the building, but for a single family, I have to know that area. Why do I have to know that area? Well, we've already talked about like Brentwood north of Sunset versus south of Sunset. Okay. If I try to pull in comps from the other side of what I needed to comp out, my numbers would be completely inaccurate. But on a map, it's right there. Why would I think anything different unless I know? You know, a lot of this you can drive over to that area and you can kind of take a look at, you can feel the difference in value as you cross, right? So always make sure you take a look at Google Maps, you drive that area, you ask people until you're super familiar, okay? You can look at comps from the general area and you need to notice these patterns. So if I didn't know any better and I pull comps for something north and south of Sunset, right? I'm gonna see a significant price difference, just generally speaking, between stuff that's north and stuff that's south. And I need to pick up on that if I don't already know these things until I become an expert and I know these things by heart. I need to pick up on those patterns so that I don't shoot myself in the foot or give really bad advice to my clients and make a fool of myself and lose that client forever and damage my reputation. You know, poor dad, I'm gonna sell him down the river right now. My dad, adopted, great dad, I love him. He was an engineer for the longest time, but he's been a real estate agent for almost 40 years. I don't think he's a very good one. I love him, but I don't think he's a very good one. He works primarily with out-of-state investors, income property. And one of my very first listings was a really big listing. So who did I go to for help with my comps? I went to my daddy. And this was Cantor Canyon north of Sunset. And my daddy sent me a bunch of comps south of Sunset. And he valued the property at least $2 million under what my rough estimate was of the value of the property. And we had one of the biggest fights we've ever had to this day because I was like, Dad, what is this? And he's like, no, these are good comps. You have no idea what you're doing. And I was like, no, Dad, I do. These are all south of Sunset. I'm comping north of Sunset. Property value is higher there. And, you know, I was attacking his profession, so he was kind of mean to me, but I was right. And so, you know, that really could have hurt me, So you have to know, and until you know, drive, ask, look. Sometimes value can increase and decrease dramatically based on very small geographic barriers, you know, like a freeway here, a main street here. And so I really only want to look, even though this is all the same area, they all feed to the same school. Sometimes I only want to look at like a 3-block radius because I have a hard, busy street here. I have a freeway here. And then everything this far, you know, 3 blocks north is all condos. They're not even single family, right? So even if I have a single family and they're surrounded by condos, it's not going to be worth as much as a straight up like hard single family residence area, right? So you have to really know so that you only pull comps from these parameters. I'll give you another example. Brentwood's just so easy in Kinder Canyon because it has some weird stuff. The west side of the street is all flat lots, large for the most part, 10,000 square foot flat usable grassy lots. The east side of Kinder Canyon Street, all of the lots are almost basically a coat. So even though the lot sizes are the same, they're completely unusable. So the stuff on the east side of the street is worth significantly less than what's on the west side of the street, same street. Okay. So how do you know that unless you go to Brokers Opens and start learning this stuff? How do you know this without looking at, even if I'm pulling comps, if I'm not familiar with an area, I don't even start sticking my criteria in there. I start looking at like all of the recent sales of all the homes in the area so I can try to pick up on patterns like this. So I know to even like question these things. Like, do I need to be worried about factoring this in? Is there something I don't know? You really need to know. Good real estate agents stalk, just don't get caught stalking, okay? Go check out their property, drive by it, chill, sit, take some photos if you can. If there's anything for sale, schedule a fucking fake showing and go check it out. You know, like, you need to know what you're talking about. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, sorry, there's stuff in the chat box here. Oh, there's something here. Are you guys still having problems hearing at home?
Yeah, there's just some frequency coming from one of
Guys?
the accounts. We think it's from the camera, but we can still hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very hard to hear.
Yeah, it's very hard to hear.
Is this better?
It's not necessarily you. It's like the
Okay.
camera or something.
Okay.
It's the
I don't know
static.
much about the tech stuff,
It's
so
some of the frequencies coming. It's very hard to hear.
I couldn't catch any of that, babe.
We can hear you okay. We will try as best as we can.
Thank you. Yes, I saw a hand.
Yes, I also use Google Earth because Google Earth is great. It'll provide a 360-degree circular view. So if you're looking at hillside properties, provide additional topographical data.
They will. Sometimes though, there'll be absolutely zero imagery on Google satellite or Earth. So just keep that in mind. Stalk, go talk to people that are selling in that area. Look at every sale, you know, there. Even if a sale is 5 years old, does that give me information about what properties like in that area or help me pick up on patterns as far as maybe geographical barriers? It does. So I'm going to pull up the MLS now. What if it's also like gated or something? Well, if it's a gated community, the nice thing about that is a lot of the homes are very similar. So it's not probably as important to stock them. Yeah. Not always, but a lot of times. All right, so I'm going to pull up the MLS. And I am going to show you how like the general functionality of how I pull comps. How do I get rid of this? And then I'm going to show you the plugin for Cloud CMA because there is a CMA presentation program that connects directly to the MLS that is free to you, that is easy to use, and is super customizable. I'm just going to show it to you and how to pull the properties into it. It is so user-friendly. I highly encourage that you play with it because you can set up templates, you can put information in and out. You want to customize it every time, but you probably want a base template with like your contact information and your picture in there to start with. All right, so let me do my screen share for everybody at home. Oh, I have to do cast. Yay! That never happens. All right, for those of you at home, when the MLS pops up new windows, sometimes it doesn't automatically transition the screen share. So if I start talking about something and you don't see what I'm talking about, please interrupt me, let me know, okay? All right, so when I go to look for something, I have to go to search, and then I have to check the kind of property, right? Because we're certainly not using single family sales to comp a condo and vice versa. Same thing with income property. Income property is very complicated because value has a lot to do with income, not just condition of property. So I'm just going to select a single family. And one of the very first things that I do, because I know location is king, is I'm going to type in the subject property address that I'm trying to pull comps for, whether that's a listing I need to, a listing appointment that I'm going for, or that is a evaluation to give to buyers as a recommended offer price. Okay, so this one was from 708. All right, so I sold this listing a few years ago, and I like to use it as an example because it has super hard geographical barriers as to what properties I'll even consider looking at as far as comps before I even put criteria of bed, bath, any of that in there. Okay, so I put in my subject address, I zoom in so I can see these things. Do you see these hard geographical barriers? I have the 10 freeway, I have the 405 freeway. I'm only half a block from the freeway. So I really don't want to consider any property that isn't affected by the lack of desirability or less desirable proximity to the freeway, right? I have Westwood Boulevard, and then I have the Expo line. And even before the 405, I have Sepulveda. These are all major streets, right? So I do not use a radius search. A lot of people use zip code, MLS area, or radius to define the parameters of where they're looking for their comps. That is very inaccurate. It's too much. It's too general, right? Do you think that Beverly Hills south of Wilshire is worth the same as Beverly Hills north of Sunset? No. So why would I be looking at 90210, or why would I be looking at Beverly Hills in its entirety? I would never do that. I need to look at the comp area that is relevant to whatever my subject property is. So I'm never using radius, I'm never using MLS, I'm never using zip. What I'm doing is I'm checking draw, and I'm selecting the shape that looks like a house. It's for polygon, it's for free form. It's very customizable. So even like, let's say I make a mistake and I don't even notice Sepulveda Boulevard's there, and I decide this is probably the area that would include comps that would be relevant to my subject property because of all of these factors, the Expo line, proximity to the freeway, all of that. Then I'm like, oh no, here's Sepulveda. Guess what? I can pull this back over here and I can fix that right up. Okay. So this is not a large area. I'm not expecting to get a lot of comps, right? So what do I start with? I start by selecting sold. And ideally, I'd like comps within the last 6 months. If I need to, I'm totally comfortable going back a year, but I also have to keep in mind, most of the time the real estate market is not as volatile as it has been recently, right? So stuff that sold a year ago probably has more aggressive pricing than I can necessarily get away with now, unless my property is particularly great, right? So I need to think about those things, and I don't know how you factor them in, right? If I'm looking at a $5 million sales price, something that was comparable 1 year ago, it's probably worth the high fours, in my opinion, for a seller I'm telling about now. Why? It's not because the property is actually worth less. It's because I have less buyer competition, okay? And buyers pay, when they can borrow so cheaply, they'll pay more because it's easier for them to buy, it costs them less, and because there is competition, they get emotional and they do things that they wouldn't otherwise do when they're being rational. Good for a seller in a good market, not so great for a seller in a market that's not so strong. By the way, this is a normal market anyways. 6%, 7% interest, that's normal. anything below is great. But people have very short-term memory and they have a really hard time accepting new market conditions, right? So it's usually the first transition year. Sellers are stubborn, buyers are stubborn. Buyers think they're going to get, the market has crashed and they're going to get this steal of a deal. That's not the case. It may not be a super strong market anymore, but it hasn't. Whereas sellers are like, well, my house is great and all these homes sold for this and they had 20 offers. What's wrong with you? No, nothing's wrong with me, dude. There are just less buyers. All right, so a very small area to look at. I'm willing to go back a year if I need to. I'd like 6 months. And I play with this. I screw around with my criteria until I have good comps, right? If I can get away with 6 months, I do 6 months. If I can't, I go back for a year. Sometimes I have to go back more than a year because the area here, these geographical barriers are so important in the instance of the value of this property that I am happier to go back a few more years and adjust for property value increase generally year over year. So once I have some properties, I've looked in the last year, I'm going to start entering things like, I told you there's a big difference between a 2 and a 3 bedroom, but there's not a big difference between a 5 and a 7 bedroom, right? It's more about square footage at that point. But in the 3 bedroom, I probably want to look exactly 3 bedroom. Let's say it was a 2 bath house. I'm okay with looking like 2 to 3. If I have no criteria, then I'll get more relaxed with these because I have to have a baseline, even if I have to make a lot of adjustment to it. I have to have a baseline. Okay, so great. I've got 8 listings. Can I get pickier? Yeah, if I'm going to get pickier, I'm probably going into living square footage, right? So let's say I've got a 1,500 square foot home. I'm probably willing to look 1,200 to 1,800, at least to start out with. If I don't have any comps, then you know what? I'll open those parameters a little bit more. And then I have to really also factor in like price per square foot. When I find something that is of comparable value, but it's larger, has the same specs, it's comparable quality, comparable condition, fine, I can use that comp. But can I use that number from that comp that is comparable? No, I cannot, because it's larger. So I have to look at the price per square foot. So if it's $1,000 a square foot, but it's 300 square feet bigger, I have to take that $1,000 per square foot of something that is very comparable, and I multiply that times the square footage of my subject property if I need to. So remember, I told you sometimes there are no good comps. That is my rough and dirty method of formulating, a rough baseline of value. Is I find something of similar condition, same area, but different spec, and then I work my way back with math. It is a rougher estimate, and I do explain this to my clients when I have this very rare, difficult situation, that my estimation is rougher. This is why, this is how I did it, and I show them, right? Also, sometimes I have the problem of, I can't find anything similar in spec, but I can't find anything fucking similar in condition either. What do I do then? I take the high, medium, and low as far as condition. I average them together. If my home is leaning towards the lower end of condition, I'll use this price per square foot method, but I'll average it out, and I'll get a range, and I'll look at what the lower end is if it's less good condition compared to the comps, and I'll stick my value somewhere in that range. If it's in the better condition area of that range, I'll explain this again to my client, and I'll stick it in that higher estimation of range. It is art, it is not science. You have to look at every photo, you have to read every single word, you need to call, because if you don't, you're going to miss something. And that could be the difference between you getting the business, right? Or getting the business and selling it, or getting the business and having a happy client or not. Okay? Yes.
Qualitative and quantitative.
Yes, both. You need to be both. You need to be very good at both. Because do people make home purchases based on data alone? It's about the way it makes us feel, no matter how logical you are, huh? Because that's our home. So it's both. Both. And there are indescribable factors into value, right? You can have the same exact home on the same exact street on the same lot, but one of them is beautifully decorated and pristine, pristinely clean, right? And it's really just the homeowner's personal belongings and decor choices that is different. That house will sell in multiples for far more. That's why staging is so powerful. It is an emotional factor. All right, so we've talked about these geographical barriers and why they can be so important in looking at everything. And what I'm more and more picky about and less picky about are ulterior methods of finding value that are a little less accurate, but sometimes we're forced to use. And remember, if you err on the side of caution and advise your client on the seller's end, to go on the lower end, because all that can happen is we can get more offers and more interest. You don't have to accept an offer. And on the buyer's end, encouraging them to make an offer at the highest price they are comfortable with, you can't really go wrong. Can't really go wrong, because all you're doing is honoring your client's feelings based upon their reaction, the information you gave them, and that is your job. All right, so let's say now that I read every single word of these, I looked at all of the photos, I called all of the agents, and I've decided that some of these or all of these, whatever, are comps that I'm going to use for my comparative market analysis report, right? Perfect world, all of these are perfect. I select all of these. All I have to do once I select or unselect the ones that I want here is come over here and click Cloud CMA and say create a CMA. And all of those listings, the pictures and information from it pop right on in to Cloud CMA. I put my client name in here. I put the address in here. Actually,
Kristen, we
correct
still
address
just see the
because-
MLS page, not the Cloud CMA page
Okay,
or screen.
better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You do, I have to put in a real address here because it pulls in maps and things like that. You'll put in the bed, bath, square footage count. If you want to add a photo of the property, you can. I don't usually have them at this point. And then you'll say fetch listings. And here we are. You have the ability to set a price or a price range recommendation. Remember, again, a lot of times I don't want this in my CMA because until I see the property, I haven't decided yet. I have not decided yet. And I talk all about that in listing presentation. How I make those decisions, when I make those decisions, what I make that decision based on. Sometimes I'm very confident in it and I'm happy to put the range in there. Sometimes I'm not. You have the ability to take any information that is in here also out from the following screen from here, simply by clicking a minus button or dragging something out or in. There's a little icon with an eyeball will show you. So if you're like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. You can click the eyeball and it'll show you what it looks like with all of the information that's going to be on there. So you can decide if you want that in your CMA report or not. So just for intents and purposes, I'm gonna leave this alone. Always double check yourself. You'll see these medians, averages, highs, lows. If you got some crazy numbers over here, likelihood is you accidentally stuck a comp in here that you didn't actually want to use, which is easy to do because you've been staring at the fucking MLS and the photos for like 4 hours at this point and you can no longer see anything. Yeah, I know it's up. I've done it. Oh, or I added a 0 on something somehow, or not enough zeros. That I'm the queen of one or one too few zeros. So always double check yourself. Once, and you can still just exclude something. You don't have to go back out and back in if you made that mistake, okay? Once you've determined, yeah, all of these are good. They're still good. Now that I see this, nothing looks weird. You hit customize report and you're gonna get to the screen where you can customize themes, layouts, fonts, covers. This list is what is actually showing up in the CMA that you have as of the moment. So remember I told you about that eyeball. You can pull up that eyeball, see what it looks like, decide if you want it. You don't want it, you can hit this minus. You're like, oops, I do need that back. What even was that? Is this it? No. Whatever. You can move things around as far as order. Right, I can put this in front of this.
I don't have all this stuff.
You 100% do. They're probably under here, and so you can just pull them over.
Okay.
Yeah, you 100% have it. So play with it. It's very, very user friendly. Look at everything. Print it out. review it before you share it with anyone. There are occasionally, but very rarely, glitches where I select property comps. And then let's say there's 5 of them, and for some reason, only 4 will pull in no matter how many times I go back out and back in. Don't know why. It's happened to me twice that I can even remember, but it did happen. So be observant. Think about these things. That's obviously going to be important. I don't know what your workaround is for something like that, but clearly we need to find a workaround for it. Even if it's really just pulling the MLS, even if you're handwriting numbers, right? If you're hand doing the math, you've got, if that comp is relevant, it needs to be in there, even if the system won't let you have it for some reason. Call the MLS help desk. They're really good. I don't know if they could fix that problem or not, but maybe. Yeah, so that's Cloud CMA. Very easy. Play with it. Have fun with it. Does anyone have any questions for me about CMA? No? Okay. Practice, practice, practice.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you had like 6 or 7 of them and you forgot to add one, is there a place where you can add it right in that report?
Yeah, you always have a back button. Even after you publish the finalized report, you can go back into the criteria and you can edit it.
Okay.
You can manually enter it in there. There's a box you'll see at the bottom of the very first page. You can manually enter an MLS number in there if you wanted to add something. Or you can just do it, you know, like you can go back and into the MLS and just use the Cloud CMA plugin. All of it's so user-friendly, fast, and easy that it doesn't really matter. It's probably even faster to redo it than it is to go find the MLS number, go to the right screen and type it in. Yeah.
Thank you. And where it says the price that you skipped, if you put a price that you think it should be, does that come right at the first page, or does it come?
It comes wherever you decide it to be. I showed you can drag those items around. Yeah. And then once, you know, yeah, you can customize that as much as you want. So you can not have that page at all. You can have that page with a number. You can have that page with a price range of a number. Sometimes I'll have it printed out and with me, but I haven't seen the property, so I'm scared. So I keep it separate from the rest of CMA. And once I get in the house, if I feel comfortable with it, I'll pop it back in. You know, it doesn't really matter. I can take anything in and out I want. I can change anything I want. This is my report, and it's so user-friendly. Play with it. But again, guys,
is there another place that you can also check your work that you've done on the comps? Is there another
no,
website?
No, how are you going to check it? You can't check it because can anyone that's not a real estate agent or appraiser, can they accurately value property? No, they cannot. Why? Because it is not just science. It is art also. Qualitative. It is very qualitative. So, estimates, no. Algorithm cannot give accurate anything because they do not have eyeballs, they do not have a heart, they do not have emotions, so they cannot tell you how a human being is going to respond to a property. And think about this, if it's all based on specs because it's an algorithm, all it can be is math. Okay? What does that mean? If I've got 2 homes of the same spec, our year built does not change, but one has never been changed. It's a 1930s, 1940s house, all original. The house next door, exactly the same specs, has been completely gutted and remodeled in the latest, finest finished carpentry. Are they worth the same thing? Absolutely not. But does that algorithm think so? 100%. Because it cannot tell the difference. It's the same year built. It cannot look at the photos and tell you this is beautiful and this is disgusting. It cannot do that, right? So, no, the only place to check your work is if you have another agent check you. Yeah. Obviously, if your numbers are so far off, you can check yourself that way, right? Like if there's never been a property sale that high in that area ever by like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, you probably fucked up. Or there hasn't been a property sale that low there in a decade, you probably made a mistake somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. And guys, practice this. This is one of the most important elements in any representation we provide, and it is not easy, and it is nerve-wracking, and it is important. And even if you're right, your client is going to question the shit out of you. So you better know what you're talking about and feel confident in the work that you did, right? Okay. All right. So, good luck. Go practice. Go play. Make a Cloud CMA. Get it ready for the time you really do it so that you have a professional presentation with the information you want in it when it's time to share it with your client. so that you can focus on telling them why they're wrong instead of wondering what it is you put in this fucking report and how to understand it or explain it.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.